His arrest made headlines around the world. A Canadian school teacher convicted of unspeakable crimes against children in Indonesia.
The things running through your head: I'm Canadian, I'm a teacher, I'm going into a prison in Indonesia. Is this a movie? Is this a nightmare?
He's out on appeal, but his nightmare is far from over. The government wants him back behind bars. His passport's been revoked. He's trapped in Indonesia. So now he and his wife Tracy are fighting to clear his name.
When you live through a situation where it's so obvious that there's an injustice, you need to speak out.
We'll investigate the questionable evidence that was used to convict him. As a determined wife fights for her husband.
My husband is innocent.
And the child's mother fights to put the Canadian back in prison.
Do you believe that Neil Bantleman sexually assaulted your son?
Yes.
Yeah. This is the worst allegation that you can go into prison with. So, yeah, we're terrified.
I'm Mark Kelly, and this is The Fifth Estate. Jakarta is the city that never stops. 10 million people in perpetual motion. Those who hesitate are lost. The city's soundtrack, a grinding buzz of endless activity. Indonesia's capital is one of the fastest growing cities in the world. Some come here for the adventure, others for the opportunity. Neil and Tracy Bantleman came here for a little bit of both. It was a world away from Calgary, where the two school teachers had met. Neil was a popular phys ed teacher at a prestigious prep school. Tracy devoted her life to teaching elementary school. It was their love of teaching and travel that brought them to Indonesia, where they both landed jobs at the elite Jakarta International School.
The school had everything we were looking for, and we were willing to take that step to live in Jakarta despite, some of the challenges that people face living in this very big city.
He and Tracy were sort of rock stars of the international circuit in that year.
Tim Carr, the head of the school, considered the Canadian couple quite the catch.
This very dynamic teaching couple that was highly regarded, and their reputation was just fantastic.
And what a place they chose to work. Every morning, the children of some of Indonesia's wealthiest and most privileged families are dropped off. Some by school bus drivers, some by their own drivers. It's a privileged place, especially in this third world city. Parents here pay a lot for the education, so they expect a lot from the school. Neil and Tracy were up for the challenge.
I certainly felt the first time that we walked on campus that it had that feel that, something great is happening here.
The school sits on 40 acres of lush land here in South Jakarta. This is kind of like the Beverly Hills of this bustling city. So it's easy to understand why the staff consider their school a haven or an oasis, though others would say they're living in a bubble. And in March 2014, that bubble burst. It began with rumors rippling through the campus. Shocking allegations of child sexual abuse in dark corners of the sprawling campus. And the rumors came from one mother. An emergency meeting was called by panicking parents. Maura Quick was there, along with almost 200 others.
When we all came to that meeting, we all believed, well, maybe not all, 99.9% of the people believed something happened. It was very tense, it was very emotional.
The meeting, the explosive allegations, and the parents' growing concerns all recorded on Maura's phone.
Bird inside my butt so deep until my
striking. I was crying.
The mother listed in great detail how her 5-year-old son, a kindergarten student, had been sexually assaulted at the school in this bathroom behind this yellow door, just steps from the boys' classroom, just steps from a busy courtyard. The culprits? She blamed the school's cleaners. Then, another parent suggested her son may have been assaulted too.
Have you been attacked in the toilet? He was like getting very... And then, yes, mommy.
People were angry. It wasn't just emotional and gasp anymore, but it was angry. People were talking about, let's get into our cars and go to Tarogong. That's the main street where the school is, and ask them to close the school. I felt that the mob mentality wouldn't help. If anything, it would hurt.
The lynch mob was forming. Almost everyone was convinced something terrible had happened at the school.
When these allegations first surfaced, did you believe that that child had been sexually abused?
Why would you not? When a mother comes to the school and says that my child has been sexually abused, why would anybody think that that didn't happen?
I was shocked. How could this happen? You're horrified. When some kind of allegation like this comes forward, it creates massive hysteria.
Days later, that hysteria spread like wildfire when the mother went public. She met with police, with news media in tow, claiming she now had proof her son had been sodomized at the school. She waved around a lab report that she said revealed her son had contracted the herpes virus from the assault. And she claimed he'd been assaulted multiple times by multiple cleaners at the school. She then slapped the school with a $12.5 million lawsuit. The school's curated calm was shattered as angry demonstrations grew outside the gates. Police hadn't even completed an investigation yet, but the public had already reached a verdict. The school was guilty.
In the age of social media, that can spread like wildfire, and that's what happened. And there was a time when, people were saying, look, you've got a huge portion of the country that believe these allegations.
The 5-year-old boy was questioned by police and shown pictures of the cleaning staff. Based on the boy's say-so and his alone, 6 cleaners were arrested, 5 men and a woman. The pressure was now mounting on the police to take action. The suspects would be paraded by police before TV cameras. The cleaners, it was alleged, were a ring of sexual predators. At this point, the suspects hadn't even appeared in court. But the trial was well underway in Indonesia's powerful court of public opinion. In early April, the cleaners were brought to this police station for questioning, though all along they maintained their innocence, saying they did nothing wrong. Then overnight, everything changed. One by one, they confessed. Confessions they later retracted, saying they were beaten out of them by police. This cleaner described the torture he says he endured at the hands of the police.
Mata saya dikasih rokok, staples. Saya suruh makan rokok, mata saya dilakukan pakai bang besi, selang.
One of the cleaners, a 27-year-old named Azwar, wouldn't make it through the night. Within 24 hours of his arrest, he was pronounced dead. Police said he committed suicide by drinking bleach in the bathroom at the police station. But that version didn't seem to square with this picture of the victim, his bruised and battered face still swollen, even in death. But with confessions in hand, the cleaners' convictions were now inevitable. The 4 men received 8 years each, The woman got 7 years as an accomplice.
Kekerasan seksual disodomi sama petugas kebersihan sekolah.
But the cleaner's convictions didn't satisfy the mother, who was on a quest for justice. She wanted the school to investigate its teachers too.
Then you could start thinking, what else is coming? Where is this going? Mm-hmm. So then you started having some doubts as to the legitimacy of the allegations.
And wonder who's going to be next.
Yeah, whether who's going to be next.
Tuh, yang Putri pergi ke kamar mandi.
Well, it didn't take long. Eventually, one of those mothers sent an email around to parents. She questioned her son, who said he saw a teacher and a teacher's assistant sexually assaulting boys at the school. In the email, she wrote, "They'd been abusing our children badly and threatening all of them with, 'I'm going to kill your mom or dad if you tell them what happened here.' The 6-year-old boy said he recognized the teacher. It was Neil Bantleman. It was June 5th, around 7 p.m. Neil and Tracy Bantleman were home watching TV. The phone rang, and Neil's life was about to change forever.
You know, I hung up the phone and was sitting there for a minute and just thinking, now I have to go tell my wife that I've been named as a suspect, accused of sexually assaulting kids. Like, your worst nightmare. For a teacher, I would assume for anybody, right? The worst thing that you could be accused of doing.
When he came back in, he sat on the couch in front of me, and all the color completely washed out of his face.
Yeah, I just asked her to hug me.
Yeah.
Because she was so stunned by the thing that she seemed like horrified and angry. And yet I just needed to know that my wife was there for me. Because you know that things aren't going to go well.
Neil and teaching assistant Ferdinand Chiang were called into the police station for questioning. Neil thought the matter would quickly be cleared up. Instead, he was arrested and thrown in jail. He was stunned.
The things running through your head. I'm Canadian. I'm a teacher. I'm going into a prison. It's 1 a.m. and it's like, is this a movie? Is this a nightmare?
When we come back, that nightmare intensifies for Neil Bantleman and his wife Tracy.
You know what it's like?
Tahu rasanya bagaimana?
To see your husband wearing a shirt that says prisoner?
It's July 2014. Neil Bantleman and teaching assistant Ferdinand Chiang are in custody, charged with sexually assaulting young boys. Bantleman says the guards suggested they stay in their cell. It was the only place that'd be safe.
Go into this cell, there's 7 or 8 other guys in there, and you don't know what to do, where to sit, who to talk to, if you're gonna make it that night. I mean, you're going in with allegations that you abused children. This is the worst allegation that you can go into prison with. This is where you hear that, this is where you get your justice, or the street justice, as they say. So, yeah, we're terrified.
His wife Tracy felt at some point authorities would look deeper into the case and realize they'd made a terrible mistake and release him. Instead, he was repeatedly interrogated, put in police lineups, and treated like a common criminal.
He looks so broken. I grabbed him and held him, and he just said, "Get me out of here." And I believed at that point that we could.
But standing in their way was a mother on a mission. Convinced her boy and others had been sexually abused at the Jakarta International School, and she took her case to the public.
Please go. Don't hurt me. Go away. Ampun, Mbak. Ampun, Mbak.
The mother, who goes by the name Pipit, appeared on Indonesia Lawyers Club. It's one of the most popular TV shows in the country where true crime stories are hashed out in public. She concealed her identity, giving her the look of a masked avenger crusading for justice.
Nah, ini kan konteksnya anak saya kecil, bukan diperkosa sekali dua kali, tapi berkali-kali. Ini berarti bukan cuman pelaku yang salah, sekolah lalai juga, betul nggak? Iya. Nggak bisa gitu, sekolah harus tanggung jawab dong. Jagalah anak Anda masing-masing gitu.
Her case and her cause were winning her support right across Indonesia. She held a news conference with her lawyer to announce she was increasing damages in her lawsuit against the school from $12.5 to $125 million US. Maura Quick says some parents at the school now began questioning the mother's motives.
Right at that moment in time, I think she lost credibility in many, many ways. Again, remember, this is a crime that involved a child. And it's difficult for us to think about, or, to say it outright, that is there a motive to this thing? You just feel inhumane to say that, But when it was $125 million and all of a sudden teachers are named, I think people knew where all of this were going.
It was for the money.
Exactly. And they needed to name the teachers to strengthen their case.
We had questions of our own for Pipit. She's left Indonesia, moved to Europe with her family. She and her husband agreed to speak with us on the condition we conceal their identities to protect their son. Pipit says that's what the case and her crusade is all about, protecting her son.
But it has been said by some that this was an indication that you were in this for the money. That that was your motive.
I have to face that every day. They call me liar. If they are here, I will kick their face. They call me liar. If that has happened to their son, they will call me a liar. And then talking bad about me, take my picture, drawing me they even call me a bitch. I say, if there is a God there, just let one of the parents get the children get raped, then know my feeling. That's what I mean.
How could we try and do this? We involve multiple government organizations, get other parents involved, make up these stories.
The whole police.
Get the police force behind us, multiple hospitals and laboratories. How would we do that?
They insist the truth is on their side, and they point to the lab tests that they say confirm their son contracted herpes after being sexually assaulted.
You believe that there is solid, physical, medical evidence that your child has been sexually abused?
Yes. Because it's not somebody is telling me, but the doctor that I met that checked my son, I asked, and then go to another doctor in the police, right?
My husband, Neil, is innocent. We have absolutely nothing to hide.
Despite the allegations, Tracy Bantleman never wavered.
It's nothing short of a nightmare.
Her support for her husband as rock solid as her belief in his innocence. And she made it known to anyone who would listen. The trial began in December. The courthouse was crawling with media. And in the crosshairs of the cameras, Neil Bantleman. facing multiple charges of sexually assaulting 3 young boys. But to protect the identity of the children, the case was held behind closed doors. The public and the media would not hear the sensational details in this case against him. The case would hinge on the testimony of the 3 kindergarten-aged kids, their word against the teachers.
Bulan Mei tanggal 5 2014 di Polda.
Bantleman was represented by one of Indonesia's most celebrated attorneys, though from the beginning, Hotman Paris felt this was a case he couldn't win.
I'm a 30 years court experience. I can feel the way the judge asking question, to which direction. I know my case will lose or not. I already said that to my client, he's going to lose, I said, even 2 months before the decision. Even in the beginning of the case, I know they will be guilty. Quite often the judge here do not want to issue a decision contrary to the public opinion.
And you think they're doing that just because they want to appear?
Because they have to do it to save their job. They have to do it to get the sympathy of the public.
Outside the courtroom, Bantleman had the unwavering support of the school and its students.
Who's at school if you're all here?
Inside the courtroom, it was a different story. According to court transcripts, the judge repeatedly dismissed key medical evidence and expert witnesses who testified for Bantleman and teaching assistant Ferdi Chiong.
At what point during this trial do you think that it wasn't looking good for you?
Pretty early on. There were some factors that started pointing to the fact that this was not going to end positively for Ferdi and I.
The courtroom drama would last more than 4 months. In April 2015, it took the judge almost 9 hours to read her verdict. It was a blistering indictment of Bantleman. The defendant did not admit his crime or express regret for his deeds, nor did he apologize for what he did, which psychologically damaged underage children. There is no reason to forgive the defendant. He should be found guilty, she said. As Tracy, fellow teachers, and supporters sat stunned in the courtroom, Neil Bantleman listened, never expressing any emotion.
I didn't want to give anybody the benefit of seeing that they could break me, or me showing my frustration or anger or sadness. I practiced being stone-faced and emotionless so that, if anything, they could take my freedom away, but they couldn't take my dignity.
Neil Bantleman and Ferdinand Chiong were convicted and sentenced to 10 years at a maximum security prison on the outskirts of Jakarta. For the woman who led the campaign, it was a moment of sweet justice.
What was your reaction when he was found guilty?
I was so happy.
We were very happy, yeah. I think for us it was more relief that we got justice.
Today was a complete miscarriage of justice, and we will continue to fight until the truth comes out. So thank you.
I am deeply disturbed and appalled by the decision of this panel of judges at the South Jakarta District Court.
The conviction lit a fire in Tracy Bantleman. She was now more determined than ever to clear her husband's name.
They have absolutely, utterly ignored all evidence in support of my husband. It is a disgrace that they have thrown out everything that our defense team has brought forward in this case.
When we return, we review the evidence against Neil Bantleman.
I want you to look at the 3 tests that were done here and give me your medical opinion on what you would conclude. Does this child have herpes or not?
Neil Bantleman was serving his 10-year sentence at Jakarta's notorious Cipinang Maximum Security Prison. An overcrowded, often dangerous home to convicted drug dealers, murderers, and terrorists. And now, a school teacher from Canada.
When I first arrived in Cipinang, I said to our cell leader, he was trying to give us advice, and I said, I am not guilty. And he's like, it doesn't matter. And I remember his words, because he was right. Once you get to that point, you're guilty. So what are you going to do about it, is what he said. Put all your emotions aside, be practical. What can you do to get out of this situation? You need to start thinking about that. Don't think about getting out and getting a non-guilty verdict, because it's not going to happen.
But his wife, Tracy Bantleman, believed it could happen, believed her husband could be freed.
We have been more than cooperative in this situation, and my husband has been mistreated by the law.
So she began speaking out against his conviction, while seeking out support to have him released from prison. The school went one step further, hiring a private investigator to look into the case. He interviewed the alleged victims, their parents, and Bantleman's colleagues. He gave his report to the head of school, Tim Carr.
We believe that an injustice has happened here.
Carr says the investigator's conclusion was unequivocal.
Nothing actually was perpetrated on the campus. The allegations that have been made, we believe to be utterly false.
So naturally, Tracy expected the Canadian embassy to get on board and support her campaign. Other Western embassies made public statements of concern. Canada never did.
You're overseas, you have no family here. The embassy becomes your key point of support. The school has supported us throughout, but you're hoping that the embassy can do what is necessary to resolve this situation immediately. Neil's innocent. He shouldn't be there.
But he was there, languishing for months in prison, just the start of his 10-year sentence. Bantleman's conviction was based almost entirely on allegations made by 3 kindergarten kids. But what about the forensic evidence? How exactly did police link him to the assaults? The Fifth Estate examined the extensive court documents to deconstruct the case against the Canadian. We looked for any solid evidence linking him to the alleged crimes. Here's what our investigation uncovered. June 13th, police raided the school, combing the building, looking for clues. First of all, Bantleman's office. Could a rape have happened here? Take a look. This is the office. 4 walls made entirely of glass, smack dab in the busiest part of the school. The boys told police they were attacked during school hours, and yet police couldn't find one witness who saw any of the alleged victims in the office. Police would also search the second floor. This is the footage that was taken as the investigators picked through the staff lounge looking for evidence. Watch as Pippet walks police through her version of the crime, even directing her son to show the investigators where he says he was assaulted. The boy said he was attacked in a secret room near the lounge. He also said Bantleman used a magic stone and a blue potion to numb him before the assaults. Police turned the lounge upside down, but never found a secret room, nor did they find a magic stone or any evidence of a blue potion. They did find this blender, which they claimed was used to mix the potion. And that was about it. They couldn't find any DNA, fingerprints, or once again, any witnesses to prove the boys were ever inside the teacher's lounge. Nothing. But then there was this, perhaps the most emotionally compelling and troubling evidence in the case. Those lab reports which Pipit carried with her, which seemed to prove the young boy had herpes. Not one report, but 4 of them, taken over a period of 19 months, which the parents said was conclusive proof the boy had been sexually assaulted.
You've shown me the tests that show that your son has herpes. But is it possible that that came from
I already asked the doctor.
A different way other than being sexual?
I already asked the doctor.
Sexual intercourse.
What they say, sexual intercourse. Even the doctor that checked my son now, the one in here, I asked her, what do you think after you see all of this? And then she says it's only sexual intercourse.
The herpes claim is critical to the case and the convictions. But what would an independent expert say? We asked Dr. Suman Chakrabarty, an infectious disease specialist in Toronto, to put the tests to the test. We began by showing him the results of the first one done on the boy in Indonesia, which suggested he may have been exposed to the herpes virus. But Dr. Chakrabarty says these results would never stand up in a Canadian court.
It's using a test that's not reliable. And what I would want to do is, I would say, okay, this is possible, but we should get more confirmatory testing with something that's more reliable.
Okay, so that's exactly what the mother decided to do. And then she went to a lab in Europe and had that test done, which she pointed to me when I met her and said, there you go, confirming once again my son has herpes. Does that confirm that?
No, this test is actually saying that herpes is negative. So there's a clinical note here saying that this is the reason why we want to do the test. But when you actually look at the test result, it's saying it's negative. The child has not been exposed to herpes.
But the mother insisted the test she had done did confirm he'd been infected. So we asked her to get one more independent test done at a European medical clinic of our choosing. With her full support, she took her son to confirm if he did indeed have herpes.
This is the one that she had just done. Yeah. We asked her and she agreed to do that for us with her son.
It's negative.
Negative.
Now, another interesting thing is, pretend the initial one from Indonesia. If that were truly positive, this should be positive afterwards. Mm-hmm. So this is now negative, which actually retrospectively proves that the initial ones were false positives.
So this is the confirmation.
That's the confirmation.
Right.
Beyond a reasonable doubt, this child has not ever been exposed to herpes.
Instead of being comforted by the news her son is herpes-free, Pipit insists the European doctors got it wrong. She maintains her son has the virus.
You still remain convinced to this day that your son was sexually abused. There is no doubt.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Do you believe that Neil Bantleman sexually assaulted your son?
Yes.
Yes.
Neil Bantleman spent 13 months in a maximum security prison. But last August, a dramatic breakthrough.
Not guilty.
The Indonesian High Court overturned the convictions. The court dismissed the testimony of the young boys and also found the contradictions in the medical evidence. The case collapsed. Neil Bantleman and Ferdi Chiang were both acquitted. After more than a year in prison, the men were finally free, their nightmare seemingly over.
Thank you, everybody, for all your support and hard work over the last 13 months. We're happy that the Indonesian legal system has proved its worth and made the right decision and set us free.
But the celebration was short-lived. Within days, the Indonesian Justice Department announced it was appealing their release. Bantleman is now trapped in legal limbo, awaiting his new trial with no passport and no right to leave. When we come back, another nightmare is about to begin. This gated community in Jakarta is a safe haven for those who live here. The residents feel protected from the chaos just a few blocks away. Neil and Tracy Bantleman live here, but they don't feel protected anymore. They left their home 16 months ago after police raided it, looking for evidence linking Neil to the alleged assaults of young boys. He was arrested days later. For the first time since Neil was released from prison, the Bantlemans moved back in, almost willing their lives to get back to normal. But with this case under appeal, Neil's freedom is hanging by a thread. His passport's been revoked. He's, in effect, a prisoner in this country. Their dream of returning to Canada is just that, a dream.
Being able to walk in the door to my parents' house and give them a hug, and just to be able to get on a plane and hand somebody your passport and having it stamped, and you can go where you want to go and do what you want to do.
Not only me, there is...
As for Pipit, the mother who spearheaded the campaign against Bantleman, her $125 million civil case against the school was recently dismissed, but she remains determined and defiant.
I will fight until end. No matter it is, people can call me crazy or crazy mom. I don't care, but my son know what I'm doing.
You're fighting for your son?
Yes, I'm fighting for my son.
And she has the full support of the state. Here at the office of the District Attorney for South Jakarta, the tough-on-crime posters reveal the populist politics of the Indonesian government. Inside, Prosecutor Sarjano Turin and his staff are busy preparing their case to try to send Bantleman back to prison to finish serving his 10-year sentence. Turin says public opinion was a factor in deciding to appeal his acquittal, but he's confident he can make the case to convict the Canadian again.
So, at the end of the day, you believe that Neil Bantleman is guilty?
Kalau kita tidak yakin, itu tidak kita limpahkan perkara itu ke pengadilan. Karena ada keyakinan itulah, maka tugas seorang jaksa yang mewakili kepentingan negara dan masyarakat itu membawa perkara ini ke pengadilan.
In the office of Bantleman's lawyer, there's an eerie air of uncertainty that perhaps in this country, justice isn't blind. In a startling admission, Hotman Paris concedes that given the outpouring of public anger around this case, he has his doubts Bantleman can win.
What have you told Neil to expect?
I told Neil that based on past experience, anything could happen. So just prepare yourself, I said. That's all I can say. And she knows that. So he's ready for anything.
Meanwhile, back at the school, security has been stepped up. Extra guards, extra vigilance designed to send a deliberate message. This is a safe place for kids. Neil Bantleman is still welcome inside the gates, though since his arrest, several teachers left, as did the families of the 3 boys who claimed Bantleman and teaching assistant Ferdi Chiang sexually assaulted them. But colleagues and parents in the school community, like Maura Quick, remain convinced of their absolute innocence.
We've spoken to the prosecutors, and the prosecutors are still convinced they're guilty, and they're going to fight to get them back in jail.
We will continue our fight also to keep them out of jail. And not only that, to say that they are innocent. I mean, just to keep them out of jail is, just one step. These are teachers. These are fathers, family. I want their name cleared, not just out of jail, out of technicality. I want them to be declared innocent.
That's the last one?
Neil and Tracy haven't worked since his arrest, but they're invited back to the school for celebrations like this one. Despite everything they've lost, everything they've been through, this kind of support gives them something to hold on to. Hope.
So I think we look towards the future with positivity and anticipation of being able to touch back down on Canadian soil and seeing our parents and celebrating truth, justice, and freedom.
The verdict from the Supreme Court of Indonesia is expected soon. So for the couple who came here looking for adventure, all they can do now is wait to see how it will end.
One final note on this story. While Neil Bantleman may have hope he can put his nightmare behind him, the 5 cleaners who were hastily convicted of assaulting Pipit's son are still languishing in prison. Convicted on much of the same evidence as Bantleman, convicted after they say their confessions were beaten out of them. But unlike the Canadian, they've exhausted all their legal appeals. They're currently serving 7- and 8-year sentences in prison. The Fifth Estate will return right after this.